lot of people are talking about how basketball should be played positionless, meaning all 5 players on the court should be able to play on the perimeter and shoot from 3 and dribble. But what if you have that one post player, that one dominant post player on your team? How can you use them in the paint more effectively to help your team win more games? And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about in today's episode. So if that sounds good to you, let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Pass First podcast. My name is Augie Johnston. I'm here with my co-host, Alex Engel. And today we're talking all about the post player. Alex, I know you've had some great post players on your teams in the past, me as well. This year, again, another great post player for us. And I'm just trying to figure out how we can use them better. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. So just first question off the bat, what makes a great post player?
I think a great post player has a few different things. Obviously, one of them, the first thing is probably the size. They've got size that gives them an advantage over other players on the court, but that alone is not enough. They've got some of the other maybe more intangible things like a nose for rebounding, the ability to finish around the basket with both hands, somebody who can, set good screens and then can catch off the roll and finish comfortably. And I would say a high basketball IQ as well. There's not someone necessarily who's like a black hole every time they touch it. They know when to pass. They know when it's their time to make a move. So kind of a combination. I'm sure there's some other things I'm forgetting, but those are some of the first things that popped up into my head.
Yeah, I think that's all. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, there's a lot of things that can make a post player great. Footwork, right? Their ability to seal. I like post players that can pass the ball. And in our offense and kind of what we do, we sometimes say that our post player is the quarterback, because I just know on so many teams, post players just don't touch it enough. If you have a true post and you're not playing positionless, and you got somebody on the block that can play inside, they don't touch it. So we'd make to make sure our post player gets the ball by calling them the quarterback and letting them pass and stuff. The first question is how to get the post player the ball. So we want them to touch it, like I said. What are some ways that you can think of that would allow them to get more touches?
An easy one can be using the screen and roll, trying to get an advantage of them rolling to the rim, make two guard one with the point guard ideally, and then get a roller to get an easy catch and for a wide open layup, hopefully, or if not, in a position where they have an advantage with their size. Another one is just simple post-ups, setting a cross screen, or even just letting them seal and post a few feet from the basket and letting them kind of go to work down there, getting some touches that way. I think that's something that you've got to work on, not only with them on the sense of the footwork and, having the moves in both directions, but also with your guards to get them the ball, because that's one of the things I see that makes it hard for bigs to get touches is guards don't look, or they don't know how to make good entry passes. It's like such an undervalued skill. So yeah, those are a couple of ways that I think obviously they can get boards, gives them extra touches as well, but that's not really something you do for them. That's something they kind of do for themselves.
Nice. And you kind of mentioned it there, like the post feed. Probably like the hardest pass in all of basketball is like feeding the post. And I think for some players at some point in their career, they try to feed the post and they throw a turnover and then they like never throw it in again. Like they'll look, no, not there. So are there any drills, or maybe just what do you do to emphasize getting that ball in there, or maybe any teaching points on feeding the post?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with the teaching points. Things that we talk about is one, ball fakes. Ball fakes are huge, and you keep it simple. Fake high, go low, fake low, go high. You don't have to overcomplicate it with the ball fakes, but we're big on that and just kind of making that a point of emphasis. The other thing is no straight passes. So we're never going to throw the ball, between like their chest and their waist. It's always going to be either a bounce pass that we like to say, below the knees. Obviously not so low, but below the knees is generally a good point for them to catch where the defender can't get to it, or up wherever their target hand is. So, you're going to loft it a little bit higher. Not necessarily a lob, but with some zip on it and try and hit them in that target hand, because that's obviously going to be the easiest place for them to catch. So that's just some of the technique wise. I mean, you can teach different types of passes, whether it's like a hook pass into the post, or again, that ball fake where you go high and just throw a regular bounce pass, but there's different entryways. And then as far as drilling it, I'm not going to sit here and say we do a ton of drilling, but we do usually every year, at least spend 1 or 2 practices where we work on this. And we'll usually put a defender on the post, and then a lot of times we'll put someone at the elbow on defense, and then we'll put an offensive player on the wing, and we'll just enter the ball to the wing. A coach has the ball up at the top, and we'll just swing it to the wing. Then the defender just closes out and then puts a ton of pressure on that guard, and that guard's trying to get an entry into it. And usually we'll put some parameters on here, like you got to catch and hold for a second and let the defender get to you, and then that way it's more game like. And then they just work on entering the ball into the post. And a lot of times something as simple as that can be effective, because in a game, even though there's other people on the court, many times it's literally just that. It's you four, players, offensive player with the ball and a defender, and then the post and a defender, because everyone else is trying to guard their man if you've spaced the floor correctly. And so just working on getting that angle. And then from there, we just emphasize it when we're in practices. If I see someone wide open in the post and we miss it, I'm going to stop the practice and call it out and make sure that they realize, okay, I'm not looking there. Because I think not just that, you brought up that players will throw a pass and get scared, but I think also it's just guards don't think about giving the ball to the post. They're like, oh, the ball's in my hands. I want to drive and kick, or I want to take the shot myself. And they're not often thinking, let me dump it inside and let the post player go to work, especially at younger ages. Because realistically, I think a lot of kids at a younger age don't have post skills. So you grow up for 8 years never having a post player, and then all of a sudden you get one, by the time you get to high school or maybe late middle school, and you're like, wait, this is a new part of the game. Like, I've never looked at this my whole life. Why would I look at it now? I don't think it's conscious. I think it's just kind of subconsciously drilled into a lot of kids.
I would agree. I mean, you go from playing 5 out as a youth, maybe your whole youth, and then all of a sudden you're 4 out, 1 in high school or something like that, and you just don't have no habits to throw it in there. Also, too, I think it's challenging for guards, right? You get a catch, your post player's posting up right on the block there. But, there's other actions, right? There's guys screening away and curling, or, there's like someone coming off a flare screen. So how do you see everything is a challenge. For us, we emphasize primary, when we get a rebound or get scored on or forced a turn, we want to get into our primary break. Then we try to get into a secondary. And then after that, we say we want to play at the post. That'd be basically getting into our half court, right? Primary break, secondary, half court offense. And when we get into our half court, we tell the guys, play with the post, play with the post. And for us, it means if the ball's on the wing, we want our post player ball side posting up, play with the post. Or if the ball's in one of the slots, we let our post player flash to the high post and run like a get, or get a catch there and play out of that. So I think that's big. The other day I was, just on social media or YouTube or something, and I saw small-sided games for post players. And I'm not going to talk about them all right now. There's 3 or 4 of them. I can't even remember who it was from. But they're really cool because it was like 2-on-1 or 2-on-2. And it was a good way to practice passing in the post live, and fun, of course, because a competitive drill. But I just thought that was cool and something we want to use this season, because it's the first time I ever saw like small-sided games, including the post player. You ever seen stuff like that?
Probably. I can't remember any specific ones off the top of my head. I think most of them that I have seen are more like decision-making drills. So you get it, the guard's coming down with maybe an advantage. It's technically a 2-on-2, but one of those defenders is kind of trailing, and then it's kind of a 2-on-1 at the rim with someone coming in behind them and then making that decision to dump it. So that is including the post, but it's not in the traditional like post-up way, right? But that's something too, I guess, and I don't know if you were planning on talking about this more later, but putting post players on the weak side and allowing guards to drive and dump gets them easy buckets too. And that's a great strategy if you have guards that can get to the rim and draw over that help defender.
Yeah, so you're talking about almost like the dribble drive stuff, when you drive in, draw the post. And that's not just dribble drive, right? You're just playing basketball and that stuff happens, and then dish it to the big. And yeah, so for us now, we're this year, because we have a 6'7" post player, we're really emphasizing on the lob pass on that, and not the drop-off bounce pass. Where in the past, we're only doing the bounce pass. We were never throwing the lob. So, I don't know, just a little tidbit there for anybody listening who's got a tall player. Is like, you throw a little baby lob right there, and I think that will normally work better for your big if they are 6'7", 6'8", or whatever. Last year, our post was 6'2", so no need to throw it up. You guys ever work on those passes? Or for the ladies, it might not be as important to throw it up? I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Sometimes it's good. I mean, it's, the lob is a different type of lob. I wouldn't say we never do it, but obviously they're not going up to catch it by the rim. But if I've had times before I have like a 6'1" post and, who could jump a little bit. And it's like, all right, if you throw it up to her, most posts are not going to be able to get it. So would we use it? Yes, but I would say much more sparingly, where on the guy side, they'll play much more vertical, so you can use it more often. It's more bounces for us. But again, you sometimes you'll run into a game. I mean, where again I had 6-1, and then their other team's big was 5-8, and it's like, all right, just throw it up, and like she'll go get it, and they're not going to get to that, So you can use it on the women's side as well.
Yes, okay, we just kind of talked about traditional post up, right? You get the catch on the wing, you're looking to throw it in the post. But I'm just going to ramble off a couple. There's a lot of other ways to get post catches. And this will hopefully spark some ideas in your head, and you can talk about maybe how you guys use these ones. But one would be like a high low, right? You got a good post player. Let's get a high low so they can catch the ball right in front of the rim in a one-on-one situation and score the ball. Have you, or how would you incorporate high lows into what you guys do? And maybe you have before, and I can talk about our experience with high lows too.
We use high low a lot with zones for sure. Like zone defense, we're going to a high low look, and it's been actually very successful for us. You have to have that person at the top that can pass really well and make good decisions. And I've been fortunate the last basically 4 years, I've had 2 players that have played that spot that have just been phenomenal at passing. And so that's super beneficial for us, because then you can either get it at the high post, and if they don't honor it, you got an open shot, or like I said, if someone steps up on a zone, you just dump it and you got an easy layup, or at least a seal, one-on-one, 2 feet from the basket. So definitely use it. Don't use it with man as much. We have used it a little bit, but I like it more for zone offenses than for man personally.
Nice. Yeah, I'm definitely zone. We're looking high-low. We had an offense that we ran. It was the Kansas kind of high-low offense. That was my very first year, and I liked it. I mean, honestly, it was, you could say it's 3 out, 2 in. I mean, one post player is always popping up to the top, so it's kind of 4 out, 1 in. But you're looking for that high-low, which we didn't really describe what high-low is, but it's a pass from basically the free throw line to the post player, from the top of the key, 3-point line to the post player. And I've seen like some teams in our league use it. And the way that they would use the high-low is almost like a set where, if you could just imagine like 4 out spacing with one post player on the block and the ball on the right wing, it'd be like the opposite wing flashing to the free throw line. It's not exactly like this. Getting a catch at the free throw line and then looking high-low from there. And like I said earlier, if you can get the ball there, like they're in space, like it's one-on-one, and all they got to do is spin right, spin left, and they should get a pretty good look there. And so like when to use that, right? Like how are they guarding the post? So you get the ball in the wing. There's 1 of 2 ways they're going to guard. Well, there's more than, I guess they could full front, right? They could full front, or they're going to 3/4 deny from the top side, or 3/4 deny from the bottom side. So if they're full front, or they're 3/4 deny from the top side, the high-low is great, because you can get the ball to the high post. The defender's on the top side. The post player can leg whip them and kind of spin the opposite direction, and you can get that wide open layup over the top right there, which I think is a great look. And then also vice versa, right? If the defender's on the bottom side, then you should be able to go high-low as well and get the ball to the high post and dump it in with like a, I don't know what you call that, not quite a duck in, but I guess it is kind of like a duck in front of the rim. And then the next way to get your post player the ball would be sets. So do you guys have any sets that you guys like to run to get the post player the ball, or are you running sets for the guards mostly?
I'd say it's a mix. We have some sets obviously to get shots for our guards, but we have some sets where we run some different actions, like some zoom actions and with some different back screens and different stuff that will then get a big ended up on the block, and that's really the first option that we're looking for. So ideally it's wide open, they get a layup, but if not, they get a catch, and again, they're 2 feet from the basket. So yeah, we definitely use sets, and I think that's a great way to get touches, because then you're being intentional about it, and you just have to make sure that you set it up with your guards and say, look, like we're running this set, it's for the big. Don't try to do too much. That's one of the things I've found is they'll try and do too much, and it's like, no, just be patient. This is not your turn. This is their turn, and let them have their turn. And then just one quick thing I was going to say when you were talking the high-low that I also wanted to talk about. I think something that is beneficial with the high-low is, or I should say, when you should use the high-low is you got to have the personnel that know how to do it. So if you don't have guards or another big that can make that entry pass successfully on the high-low, it can cause a lot of turnovers, like if they don't have the right IQ, because you got to make a little bit of a read there, and what's really beneficial is if you have 2 bigs. So like I've had years where I had my 4 and my 5 who were both, either 6 foot or right around it or above. So they could see, both of them could see over, and then it was just like, oh, you could catch an easy dump. Where if you got like a 5'5" guard, on the girls' side trying to make that same pass, it's a little bit harder. So when you got 2 players at your 4 and your 5 that both have height, I think it's easier to run a high-low option. So
no, that's a good point. The year that we did it, when we ran that offense, we did have 2 bigs, and they would cross screen a ton for each other, and then one would flash high and then look to dump it in. So yeah, good points there. If you have a post player and you're thinking about running some sets, there's a lot of different sets out there. But the typical way was, put your post on one block, some kind of ball reversal, cross screen, right? That's a block to block screen for them. And the hard part is like you said earlier, like you got to tell the players like this is for the big, because most plays where you set a cross screen or a back screen for the big, like the screeners, it's going to be screen the screener, right? They're going to set it, then they're going to come off one, and guards will only pass it to the guard coming off because that's how the play ends, right? And you have to really make a point to like, nope, you want to get him the ball. And so across screen, block to block, you could push your big on the elbow and do like a diagonal, we call it diagonal T action, which would be a diagonal back screen. I really like that because now you're getting your big downhill a little bit more for when they catch it. They can go up and finish. The cross screen can be really tricky because they'll run themselves out of position, right? So you're going block to block, and then by the time they come off it, they're short corner by the time they catch it, like the guard throws it late. They don't stop when they should stop. Like you come off it, you should kind of like start posting up right under the rim. And that's when that ball should be passed as well. Like you have to pass it early for them to get it and then be able to go up and finish. And then I would say the last thing would be like almost like some flex screen action for your big. It's similar to a cross screen, but if you're running some flex or you have a set play of flex, you can get your post player coming off that flex screen. That's pretty effective. And yeah, so those are kind of the ways. There's other ways too. We put our bigs sometimes on the top of the key instead of back screen for them, and in a set that we call, I don't know say what it's called, but in a set that we run. And yeah, you made the point earlier though about the pick and roll, right? So the pick and roll is a good way to get the big the ball. Now, what are you doing if they're switching those ball screens? Is there any kind of special thing? Are you going one more, then looking high-low, or are you, maybe dribbling back and looking to seal immediately? Is there any kind of teaching points if they're switching the ball screen? How do you get the big ball?
Yeah, so if they're switching it, I think the biggest key is just patience. A lot of times teams switch and then players want to rush and try and, make the read immediately. And it's like, okay, let the big take their time, get down there. Obviously, when you switch, now you got the point guard or whoever has the ball has a big on them, which sometimes can make the entry harder because you got a taller player guarding you. So I think if you can't make that entry, the easiest thing is to just keep the ball on the same side. And I guess it kind of depends if you have another guard in that same strong side corner that you're on or not. If nobody's over there, you may have to try and swing and go high-low. But if someone's in that corner, you just swing it back to that corner. Now you got a big, again, on the block with a little guard on him, and that corner person is probably being guarded, again, by another guard. So it's maybe an easier entry, and then you dump it in, and now, like, they're going to work. So I think just patience is the main thing when they're switching, and just taking advantage of it and punishing them for trying to switch a guard onto your post.
Yeah, those are all great points there. We set a lot of empty-sided ball screens, meaning there isn't somebody in the corner. And so if they do switch that, there's still ways, I think, to get it to them. But like you mentioned, that player, if there is somebody in the corner when you're setting a ball screen, we call it the shake. You can throw it back to the shake, and that's a great point you made, because in a scout you should know like they're going to switch all ball screens, even with the big. So you can, like, for us, we would go into that game saying like, okay, so we have a few automatics that would turn into like an empty sided ball screen, and we could just switch it and say, all right, when you cut through, go strong side corner, don't clear it out to the weak side, so we can run a shake. But that's a good point. Otherwise, if it is an empty sided ball screen, you can come off it and and I don't like this option a ton because it's picking up your dribble, but if I come one dribble off a ball screen and it's a switch, I can just pick up my dribble, do like a step through, rip through, and kind of get to my other side of my body, and then make like a little bounce pass right into the post right there. So I definitely think if teams are switching, you should always encourage your post player to seal after the switch in order to get him the ball. But we've talked about this before. Like it's challenging, like, to get him the ball in switches. To me, I'm not one that says we got to get it inside off the switches. I'd rather the big guard the guard and let my guard try to create some kind of advantage to draw help and play. And then if the big doesn't touch it, they should get an offensive rebound, right? There should be a good offensive rebounding opportunity for them. So they should get hungry for that. But yeah, anything else on getting the ball off pick and rolls?
Well, I was going to say, I think the emphasis on that depends on what type of guards you have. If you have guards that are very patient and that screen happens, the big switches, and you have a really heady, mature guard, and they're just like, I'm not worried about this bigger player pressuring me, and I'm just going to take my time and get it into the post, then you want to try and enter it probably more often because you have the players. But if you have guards that, maybe they can handle it, but they tend to rush their decisions, or I mean, every coach knows their personnel. And if you haven't gotten to the point where they're comfortable with really handling the ball with some pressure on them, then yeah, it might be better just to either swing and let someone else attack or just them attack the advantage there and try and put themselves in a position to hopefully go by the post and score, or like you said, to get an offensive rebound because now your post has got a little guard trying to box them out. So yeah, I just think a lot of these decisions on what you want to do are based on what is your personnel, and honestly, so much of it is based on what is their basketball IQ. Like skill sets matter, but really, what is their decision making processes? Because if you have a really skilled team that can't think, they're going to probably dribble into bad spots or force entry passes, and then that's where you start turning the ball over when you run a pick and roll.
That's, to me, that's the downside of the pick and rolls. It's tough pass. If you do draw two as the ball handler and you want to hit your big, it can be a tough pass sometimes, but really rewarding too. Like for us, we call wide open layups nines. And I always ask our players, in our offense, how can we get nines in the half court, right? That's the hardest part, is to get a wide open layup in the half court. And we can backdoor or, a good curl or whatever. But I always try to remind them, like, if you hit the post on a pick and roll, there's a good chance they're going to get a nine. They're going to get a wide open layup, especially if it's an empty sided ball screen. Now, and this is kind of like the next point we can maybe talk about, like as far as developing your big, like in the modern game, they need to be able to play out of the pick and roll, get a catch, whether it's a short roll maybe or whatever. And then if defense does rotate, right, and they do a good job rotating on the empty side ball screen, take away the nine, you have to, as a post player, kind of have the wherewithal to know, okay, boom, where'd the help come from there, opposite, and move the ball in order to keep the advantage and get a wide open shot in some case. Any tips on that kind of stuff? Like, I'll admit, like, we don't work on that enough, and we're not, our bigs, when they do that, it's just natural, I guess, from playing a bunch. But is there any other stuff you try to teach? And I got a few ideas myself. Try to teach your bigs about pick and rolls. Maybe not necessarily the help side defense, but anything else about how to teach a big how to run a pick and roll.
One of the big things is how to open up. Like that's what we talk about. So like when we set the screen, we want them to open up like a door. We never want them turning their back or their head away from the ball. So that's just, a small little point there. You want to open up so that you can always see where the guard is with the ball, so that your hands are ready, and your eyes are ready, I should say. And then that's the second part after that, is your hands are always ready. You want to have your hands up. As you're rolling, your hands should be kind of active and live, ready for the ball to come to you. As far as when that rotation comes and that help, one of the main things that we always talk about is help is usually always coming from wherever the ball did not just come from, So the weak side basically is a simple way. A lot of times it's the weak side of the court. So if you're getting doubled or someone's coming over, the open person is probably farthest away from the ball. More often, you probably say 99% of the time, the open person's on the other side of the court. So if you catch and you feel that pressure, you got to start looking opposite side of the court and seeing, okay, where's the one that's guarding two? Because that's where I'm going to find my open person. And then I think just being patient too. Like when the bigs catch, if that help comes, they have to know when they have the advantage or when they don't. Like if the help comes and it's another post or, another one person with size, then that may be where you want to kick. But if the help comes and it's a tiny little guard, like just catch and relax for a second, put that ball, chin it, take a second, let everyone kind of get back to their spots. A lot of times the defense is scrambling. And then, okay, just take your time, get to the block, and get to your spot and score. Because at that point, unless they send a double, like you still have the advantage. So not panicking. I know you can drill that stuff, but I think kind of what you said, a lot of it is just playing and maybe drilling it by putting them in those live situations in practice and then letting them feel that out. But it's playing. You can't put cones out and practice that. It's something that you've got to actually feel the pressure and make decisions.
Yeah, and I think that's where small-sided games come into it, right? And constraints, right? You say, okay, we're going to play 3-on-3 or maybe 4-on-4. Big's going to come up and set a ball screen. You got to double the guard every time. So now you're working on the short roll right there, getting the catch, and now you're playing in space a little bit, and you're making reads off what the defense does. I think that kind of stuff could really develop a post player to be, a complete player, not just somebody that's going to stand on the weak side block and get rebounds, but somebody that can be your quarterback and get catches. And, for us in our offense, like it evolved over time, and there was just so many years where we didn't really have a post player. but we had like a good, 6'3". We're talking about boys varsity basketball, like a 6'3" guy that on the perimeter is not really a shooter, not really a ball handler. I mean, he could be, but a great passer and somebody that doesn't want to score a ton. And we would just put him there and they would just make sure they get the ball. And it's just now your offense, you're inside out almost every possession, right? Everyone talks about how they love to play inside out, drive and kick. The easiest way to play inside out is just to throw it in the post player, let him, take a one or two dribbles, and he's going to draw help at least a little bit. Not maybe not full double or anything sometimes, but that's enough to kind of get the dominoes falling. And so, yeah, let's talk a little bit about post players and where they're getting their catches. So how do you coach it? Where do you want your post player getting catches? You got the block, the low post, you got short corner, you got mid post, you got high post, and anywhere else on the court, but just go ahead and dive into maybe some of the advantages and disadvantages or just kind of how you guys see it.
Yeah, so I would say we look at a few different things. We look at weak side block. That's one option for our posts. Again, ball handler can get downhill, so there's an easy dump. We look strong side block. If the post player is actively trying to post up and get a catch, then we're okay with that. I know again, like dribble drive, I think real strict dribble drive says like they don't want that at all pretty much. They're always weak side. I don't agree with that personally. I think if you've got a post player that can catch and score, then that's fine. They just got to know when to get over there and when not to, right? So, and that's something that you just got to kind of let them learn and teach. But I think once they learn that, it makes them harder to guard. So we're cool. I'm cool with that. One other thing we teach about post positioning, like baseline drive, fill up to what we call the dunker spot. And, that way they're getting out of the drive and they're right there for another type of dump. It's kind of similar to the weak side idea. High post catches. I don't mind my post coming up, again, depending on man or zone. But either way, if they come up and they flash and they get a high post catch and then they can go into like a handoff action or a high post catch into like a ball screen, I'm fine with that as well. We don't do a ton of short corner stuff. In some of our zone offenses, the post has the option to go there, but we don't tend to go there too often. So I wouldn't say we see that a whole lot. But yeah, probably those other four that I talked about are where my posts usually are. They're either catching and setting a ball screen, they're on the block, they are on the weak side, or they're in that dunker spot. But, there are times where my post, I know we're kind of talking more inside game, but my post players will come to the outside sometimes. And if they can shoot it, and I've had, a handful of post players that can, I'm okay with them taking threes, on a catch and shoot. Sometimes they are on a kick out or offensive rebound and they're on the perimeter for whatever reason and they get a catch and shoot three. I'm totally fine with that as well. So I'm not someone that says you cannot shoot. Like, some coaches are the flip side. We're talking about how the game's positionless, but then you have some coaches that are like, if you're a post, I don't want you ever taking a three. So I don't necessarily agree with that either. I think if they have the ability to catch and be ready to shoot, it's probably not something where you're going to be bringing the ball down the court and hezzy pull up, but you get a wide open shot and you can knock it down. That's another great advantage.
Yeah, I truly believe that even, I don't want to say non-shooter, but even just a, big man, 6'7" post player getting a wide open driving kick inside out three in rhythm is better than, I don't know, like a guard driving in there and going up against a 6'7" guy. I'd rather have my big man catching a wide open three, just feet set, bam, bam, over a small guard flying in there going against a 6'8" guy who he's going to miss it or get blocked. Yeah, for us, it's just like it's just the shot quality, right? We want wide open ones, and when you say we're only going to take wide open shots and layups and stuff, you got to live with maybe a non. And the crazy thing is they'll make them. It's like if it's wide open, it gives yourself a good chance to make it. And for us, like our post player, like I said, we in the past mostly haven't had a 6'7" post player. We mostly had smaller post players, so we put them short corner. We try to get them to not clog it up as much as possible, bring out the other big. We like a lot of face cutting and curling and stuff in our offense, so that gives us a little more space to do that kind of stuff off the ball. And then, like I said, we flash them to the high post a ton, but that short corner is good. I like because we get our players kind of like face up out of that, and we want them to attack middle. Like the way I coach post players is I always tell them we want you get into the middle. Get to the middle, because if you can drive to the middle from the post, you're most likely going to draw help. It's really hard for a weak side defender to be kind of like with his pistols out and see a post player getting all the way into the paint and not go and help. And then it's an easy pass. Your vision, if you get to the middle right in front of the rim, which you call the dunker spot, we call it that as well. kind of right in front of the rim, we tell them if you can get in front of the rim and not draw a double, then you're probably going up. Like you probably should shoot that in some way, whether you're doing a step through or you're doing a spin back or you're just doing a little baby hook. Like if you can get 2 feet, 3 feet in front of the rim, like do a little baby hook right there. Like that's a good shot for us, even if it's not wide open, like we always talk about. We'll take that. And then, like I said, if you do draw the double, then it's such an easy pass to make. And then it just avoids our big guys getting stuck behind the backboard. But now that we have a more dominant big, 6'7", I do believe that it would do us well to have him on the block or have him to get catches deeper. So that's something that us coaches on our side are trying to rack our brains on. Do we, add an element to our motion offense that gives our guards the ability to cut through and cross screen for him or screen for him in some way? Even if it's not a cross screen, I would be okay with our point guard dribbling down the right slot, post on the right block, guard on the right wing, like down screen for our post player to curl. Just come down the court, let him curl, do a quick curl. If you can hit him, it's probably 2 points. If not, then the guard would just pop right back out and we can just run our offense. But that for us, and like my challenge right now is I can't figure out how to get him the ball already with an advantage and not have to play one-on-one within our motion offense, if that makes sense. Like I know I can call a set play, but I want to add something in our motion offense that gives our guys the freedom to screen for him. Any other ideas pop in your head on how to get him the ball?
Most of the time, I guess it depends on what type of motion offense we're talking about here. If it's like a 4-out offense, I feel like a lot of times it's the traditional post up or you're on the weak side. I've seen, when I was playing my first couple of years in college, and then when I coached at that same spot for a few years, we used to run this offense called 50, which was a motion offense, but it was a 3-out, 2-in. So you had 2 on the block, guards on the outside, but then the guards would down screen. And so like it was actually really, if you think about it, positionless, because the guards would down screen, the bigs would pop out, and the guards would go on the block. And then the point guard would pass to one side or the other, one of the wings, and then they would set a down screen on that opposite block. And so like everyone was moving inside and out at the same. So it was this motion concept, and I wish I had my whiteboard here, I would draw this up, but it was this motion concept. But then at any time that you would have a big on the block, and they could just kind of reverse seal, or not reverse seal, but seal and get a catch. So that's probably the only time I've seen it like that, where you're looking to get an advantage. But it's not even there. It normally wasn't like a 1-on-0. A lot of times it was you're 1-on-1, but you're just in great post position. And yeah, other than that, I mean, maybe a flex offense, you might get your post a quick catch out of the flex, and I'm sure there's some other things, but I feel like in motion offenses, it's harder to get specific advantages compared to like a set where you're setting them up to try and get a 1-on-0 touch.
Yeah, it's just something I kind of want to play with a little bit this year. Just like, at least at minimum, I want to open the door and say like, hey, screen for the post player, you guys. Like, as you guys are cutting through there or coming off, a curl and you don't get it, like, and you got a chance to just put body on his defender, do that and just let him do like a little baby curl or something, whatever it is, right in front of the rim. And if our guys got their heads up and we can hit him right there, he'll have the ball with a slight advantage and maybe a small on him, and he can score. But yeah, so okay, let's keep this going. One thing we haven't talked about, and we're talking, in this episode about how to use your post player. You got a post player, how do you use them? Rim running. Rim running is something that I've always talked about, but we've never been good at and never emphasized enough to actually like see the fruits of our labor, right? Like I would love to score 6 points a game just rim running, whether it's a wide open layup at the rim or it's a post player sealing. Do you have a rim runner in transition, or are you guys going 5-out?
We have a rim runner, but kind of like what you said, I don't think we're as good at it as we could be. It's probably somewhere I don't emphasize quite enough. So do we get touches down there off rim runs? Yes. Do we get even in transition wide open layups? Yeah, we do. But I don't know how intentional it is that the big's thinking every time, let me rim run, as opposed to like, all right, let's get down the court, and they just end up being in the right spot. So, I mean, on one hand, I guess getting down the court is half the battle with rim running. So that's, we're doing something there, but I think we could definitely be more intentional with it. And it's just got to be kind of ingrained into your posts that you got to take off and get to your spot. And I think the second part of the rim running is not just getting ahead of the defense, but two, when you get there, like post up 2 feet from the basket, because a lot of times the defense is out of position, and that's where I feel like we don't do that well enough yet.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the way that we teach it, like I said, it's not emphasized enough, but I learned this somewhere, and I do like it, is like we teach them to rim run, get out and sprint as fast as they can, and then stop at the free throw line. So not stop, but they're it's kind of like we talked about last episode about checkpoints, right? In transition, we want guys to run ahead, then kind of stop and look back and get that ball. It's kind of the same idea. Like if we can hit our post player at the free throw line as they're kind of running down the slope as they get to the 3-point line, dude, it's one dribble and they're dunking on someone or getting a good look at the rim. Where the other side, and the reason that you do want them to kind of stop at the free throw line and look, is because it's hard to rim run and get the catch right at the rim. Now, I'm not talking about posting up. I'm talking about you're out there running, and then all of a sudden, you are open and you get the catch. You're like 2 feet from the rim. There's a defender there. Like you're going to travel. You're not going to be able to read the defense and kind of get around. Or if the free throw line, you get it. You got momentum. You're one dribble, two-foot jump stop. You're right there. And then if they don't get it right at that checkpoint, they go to that 3-point line. They check. They're not going to get it. They should go all the way to the rim, bury the defender, and whatever side the ball goes to, if it goes to the left side, try to get that defender in a disadvantage, whether on the top side, seal them and try to get them there, or if they're underneath on the bottom side, then just bury them deep and get a catch there. It was 2 years ago in the CIF semifinals, we played against North Bakersfield High School, and they had a big man that was their best player, averaging like 17 a game. And man, it was a clinic on using your post player. And the crazy thing about them is, yes, they did rim running and stuff like that, but they loved the baseline feed. So whatever, they'd run sets, they'd run all kinds of stuff. They ran kind of like a 1-4 offense with 4 players, kind of, at the elbows and then 2 on the wings. And they would run, everything they ran ended up with like the big man sealing and them throwing a baseline feed from maybe not always the corner, but it was like kind of along that baseline, real low, like almost rolling the ball. And once he got it down there, he was really good footwork and everything, finishing on the other side of the rim. And anyways, all that to say, if you can get defenders to 3-quarter deny you on the top side, and you have the ball on the wing, you should be able to take a dribble down, hit your post player, have them seal that them tops and get themselves just a nice layup at the rim there. So if you're listening to this, I guess like another tip could be like the dribble down. Like you can have your guard dribble down, or maybe someone goes to the corner, throw it to the corner. And then if you are going to feed the post that way, it's best to kind of be lower on the court. So I don't know. Any thoughts on that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, the entry pass from the corner can be a great advantage, especially when the defender doesn't know how to flip and get to that low side. A lot of defenders will just stay on the high side because they don't know the technique of getting around and cross-stepping or shuffling behind and getting around. So, yeah, there's definitely advantages to that, but I think it's something you got to work on a lot because also, one, the guards have to know to either dribble down or you got to pass to the corner, and then I think there's just always a little bit of uncomfortability being in the corner, for any type of extended period of time. So you have to be comfortable with that and know what to do and where your entries are. But definitely another option that can be useful.
Yeah, another thing that kind of popped into my head, I like post players getting a catch at the top of the key. So high post or maybe 3-point line and driving out of that. I think that's a good look for them. Like it's pretty wide open normally. And that's what I love about 4 out, 1 in is like you can turn into 5 out so easily by just flashing your big to the top of the key, 3-point line. And now if they get a catch there, you're in 5 out. There's a lot of different triggers and actions you can run from that. But really, just allowing them to drive the ball from there is hard to guard, especially if you have like a small, say you got 6'7" guy and you got 6'2" guy guarding them. As long as that big can take 1 or 2 dribbles, they should be able to get to the rim there and make a big play. So that's another spot that I've seen coaches get the ball there and kind of let it work out a little bit.
I've actually seen another one I was thinking of, not very often, but where the big can sometimes initiate the offense because it relieves pressure. Because you get your post at the top of the key, and then, most of the time the other team's post player, they won't come out all the way to guard them. And so now you can kind of set up your offense. So I've seen that used too. Again, it depends on your personnel, and it's, I don't know if you can use it every time down, but you can run like certain sets and stuff with that as you're starting. And it was kind of interesting, and it worked, when I saw it, and it worked pretty well.
Yeah, it's the Jokic. I looked at my notes here and saw like Jokic or Shaq. Like there's two different kind of bigs. That's what reminded me about the flashing to the top. But yeah, that's kind of like 2 different kinds of bigs right there, right? Like Shaq is more like what I would consider what I have maybe this year is something like we want him sealing at the rim. We want him playing around the basket. We want him cleaning up all the misses around there. And then the Jokic is one where, if you have a Jokic big, then you don't bury him in the post the whole time. You let him play out of the short corner, the top of the key, high post more. So that'd be a tip there. Okay, I know we've talked a lot about this. Let's just at least touch a little bit on the defensive side. So you got a really good big, and they're athletic and they can guard the rim a little bit. So how are you coaching them up on the defensive side?
So for my bigs, I mean, I'm big on them being as using their length as much as possible. So for when it comes to like rim protecting, obviously help side coming over, stopping drives, trusting our defense to rotate, staying down, not leaving their feet, not getting faked out. I know, yeah, you might get that highlight block, but personally I like playing the numbers. So just getting your hands up, most of the time you might get a block anyways. You'll get a tip or something, and the odds will be in your favor more often than not than if you jump at every fake that goes, or you get into foul trouble because you left your feet. So I'm definitely big on that. Rebounding wise, obviously we teach box out and then go secure the ball. So that's another thing that is a great way to use your big. Teaching them how to be physical on the defensive side without fouling. I think that is sometimes hard to do, but being that you can be an enforcer inside and not be in foul trouble constantly, and so that's it. And then I think just being able to working with them to guard the perimeter when they need to. So how to use their length. A lot of times bigs are going to be a little bit slower footed. If you're really lucky, maybe not, but a lot of times they're a little slower footed. So it's like, okay, you've got a size advantage or a length advantage, so you can give another half step off of the guard if you switched, or if we're in a hedge and recover situation where you can step out and you don't have to go quite as far out as maybe another smaller guard does, and you can still protect things in a way that allows you to be effective and not get blown by. So I would say those are kind of the main points. I'm sure I'm probably forgetting something, but those are things that came to me right when you said that.
Yeah, I like the one about rim protection. Like for us, we want to, if the other team has a non-shooter, like our big is just camping. Like he's just camping at the rim, walling up on any layup and stuff like that. And also too, like if you like to press, like it's good to have a good rim protection at the back line, right? Like, okay, so they do break your press a couple times throughout the game, but they're getting a 2-on-1, which would normally be 2 points for them, but you got a big back there that's guarding the rim. So, for us, last year we were really heavy in the man press, and this year I'm like, in the summer we did man press, but at the same time I'm like, is that really the right call? Like I could 2-2-1, I could diamond a 1 and put that big in front of the rim. So I think that's another good way to use it. And then the last thing I would add about the defensive side is like if you have a big dominant big and they're getting 12 rebounds a game and stuff like that, then you should anticipate and plan on, your big getting the majority of the rebounds. So let's get out in transition. Okay. So working on really good outlet passes from your big and working on how teaching them, the value of throwing a good outlet pass, and then what is the automatic with the big trailing, because if he's getting all the rebounds, then the big is going to be trailing the play. So there should be some sort of flow into your offense where the big can do that. And, for us, we have like, if the big gets a catch on the perimeter for us, like 3-point line, and they're not shooting or whatever, like, or driving it, it should be an automatic dribble handoff, pick and roll type play, or a pass in a ball screen. So that's an automatic that we use anytime our big gets a catch on the perimeter as a quick trigger. Okay, let's finish this off real quick the right way with talking about just 3 things. So just give me 3 little teaching points that if you had a dominant post player that you would expect out of them, and 3 things that you would emphasize. We talked about a lot of different things, but you can cherry pick any 3 things you want right here to close this out. So if a coach is listening to this right now and they're like, man, I have a good big next year, I want to, this is a lot of information. What 3 bullet points should I write down and hand over to my big?
I would say 1 is be a monster on the glass. Get offensive boards, defensive boards. Like rebounding is so important. So be a monster on the glass and really seek to go get the ball. Obviously, you teach them technique, you do all that stuff, but that should be something in their mind all the time. 2 would be protect the rim. I want a big that can protect the rim. Don't let any easy drives make everything difficult for the other team, and just be, kind of a menace on defense. And then 3, the other big thing for me would be teaching them how to get good position, and like emphasizing whether that's sealing, whether that's being on the weak side and knowing when to duck in, but just knowing where to be at the right time. Obviously there's extra layers where we could talk about finishing and different types of finishing and, fakes and pivots and all that stuff. And that stuff is great too. But if you said 3 basic things, it would be rebound, be able to protect the rim and get good position, because if you can get good position all the time, you're going to put yourself in a space to get easy layups and easy buckets, and just give yourself somewhat of a post presence, even if it's not a traditional post presence.
Those are all good. I'm not going to give you a list of 3 because I would probably have the same. I'll just add one on top, and the one that I'm adding, it could be, I don't know, it's something they have to work on, but it's go-to move. I love certain post players. They have go-to moves, and you just cannot stop it. And I think a problem that a lot of post players have is they work on so many different moves, and it's like you don't really need that many moves. You need like a step through, like a spin back and a jump hook, and that's it, And so I think for me it would be find a go-to move, work on it, and master it. So, all right, you guys, that's a little bit about post play and how we kind of look at the game in regards to being a post player and how we help our post players succeed to make our teams better. Hope you guys liked today's episode. If you did, please hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and hey, leave us a comment. Let us know what other kind of topics you want us to cover, and we will definitely make an episode about that. It'd be really fun. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you guys in the next episode.